Hey guys, it's Seth with Mid-South Overland, and today I figured I would come to y'all and tell you the story of the Moab trip that we did this year. It was definitely eventful, a trip I won't ever forget, and there was a lot of different things that went right and a lot of things that went wrong with this trip, and so I decided I would share my experience, hopefully to educate some people maybe, or just you know, even just to entertain you with the story and the mishaps that came along with going on this trip. But today I'm just out running some errands, and I figured this would just be a good time because I'm driving around in the truck to just tell you the story. And first off, I just want to preface this video by saying that the roads where I live are not very good. I know everybody says that, but I live near Memphis and these roads are pretty terrible. So video might be a little bit shaky, but just bear with me on that. But yeah, so just to kick it off though, earlier this year I took a 2-week trip. The original plan was to spend 1 week with my stepdad. Me and him were just gonna solo trip it in the truck and camp together. We were gonna go to Utah, go to Moab. Had a whole route planned for us. We were going to do that, and then after about a week we were going to go up to Salt Lake City. I was going to drop him off at the airport, pick my wife up from the airport, then she and I were going to go back to Moab and meet up with a couple people that we were going to do the rest of the trip with for the next week, or 10 days, or however long it was supposed to be. Well, nothing ever works out quite according to plan, but this trip definitely took a massive turn from what we were originally going to do. So for the portion of the trip when it was just going to be me and my stepdad, we left out from the Memphis area on a Thursday night and started driving. The original plan was we were going to drive basically until we got tired into the night, and we were going to stop and drive the rest of the way to Utah the next day. Well, neither of us were just getting very super tired, so we decided that we would drive the whole way. It was about 20 hours roughly. We ended up staying at this little hotel for the night when we first got there because we were just so tired. We had driven for almost 20 hours, and so we stopped. We get to the hotel, stay there for a night. Everything was great. Beautiful scenery. We had never been out to that area before. The next day we got up and we decided that we were going to go ahead and start exploring Utah and the areas surrounding according to the route that I had pre-planned for us. We went straight over to Capitol Reef, got to see that, got to drive near it. That was really cool, very beautiful area. Then we basically just spent that whole day traveling through that area. We got to Cathedral Valley, right around that area. We camped that night, and that was a great experience. It was very dark out there. You could see the stars very clearly. There was nobody around us. We didn't hear or see anybody all night. It was great, very desolate. So then the next morning we got up, we went through Cathedral Valley, got to see all the stuff in that area, and then drove over to the Factory Butte area, got to see that, got to see Moon Overlook, all the different colored sand and dirt everywhere, unlike anything else we had ever seen. And everything was going great up to that point. We spent that whole day exploring and then decided, well, we're just gonna go ahead and continue on to Moab. Took nothing but dirt trails to Moab. Took us about half a day or so to get there. We decided that we were gonna go to Moab that night. My stepdad had never been overlanding before, never been much into camping. This was his first real experience, so he kind of got thrown into the fire on this one. It was quite a big trip for a first time, but he decided that he wanted to stay in a hotel that night, so that's what we did. We stayed in a hotel, and we would just kind of take it on a day-by-day basis after that to see what we wanted to do. But we decided we were going to hit a bunch of trails in Moab. So the next day we get up and he's asking me what we're going to do for the day, and I kind of gave him some options. He got a little nervous on a couple of trails that we had done on the previous few days, so I kind of gave him a couple options, gave him the descriptions of some of the trails that I had mapped out that I wanted to do, and we ended up deciding we were going to tackle Poison Spider. Now, Poison Spider is, I would say, one of the more difficult trails that I've done. I will say we do a lot of wheeling in the Ozarks and in the Ouachitas and Mark Twain National Forest, but I did not lift a single tire the whole time that we were in Moab. But I've done many times in the Ozarks, so take that for what you will. But anyways, we decided we were going to do Poison Spider. We got up early, got out there on the trail. Initially, when you first get on the Poison Spider, you're going up this relatively steep hill. It's got big rocks on it, and it's got a ledge that probably drops off maybe 20 feet or so. When it first starts to get sketchy, you get a little off camber. Well, he was trying to climb out of the vehicle. He wanted to try to spot me and everything. He decided he almost wanted us to turn around. He was getting pretty nervous. But I'm just reassuring him that the truck could do it, that I could do it, that, you know, I believe at least that I had enough experience and the truck was capable enough to do the trail with no hiccups. I rarely recommend doing solo trips, not having another vehicle with you. And the same goes for this, but we were just doing what we could with what we had, and I knew that we were near Moab. We were never going to get far enough out to where we could get stranded, and it'd be very dangerous for us. We had tons of water with us. But anyways, so we start doing the trail. He starts getting all nervous. And luckily for him and for me, because having an experienced spotter is definitely a benefit to anybody in this situation. There was a group of Jeeps that had just started the trail as well. They were moving very slow. One of the guys that was in the group in front of us decided they were going to try to help spot me up one of the initial obstacles to get through and try to ease my stepdad's mind. And so he did that. We got up the obstacle. The group of Jeeps told us to go ahead and go past them because they were going to be moving slow with them. But we got to start talking to them, and they seemed like really nice guys. And so I told them that I would probably just stick with them all day because it was a better idea for me to at least be around other people if something were to happen. So for the rest of the day, we did the trail with them. I gotta say, the guys in the Jeeps were very impressed and shocked by how well the Tacoma was doing. I kept reassuring them that the Tacomas are a lot more capable than most Jeep owners would like to think. But the Tacoma did it flawlessly, did everything that the Jeeps did, even easier sometimes because of the longer wheelbase. And it was a great day on the trail. We ended up going to their campsite that night and hanging out with them, telling stories. This group of guys were actually from the West Coast, from Arizona, Oregon, and Northern California. It was really cool getting to talk to them, getting to know them, and just sharing stories. They were telling me about doing the Rubicon Trail, and I was telling them about the Ozarks and how long it took me to get out there to Utah. During all this, I'd started to develop a noise in my front end that I've been trying to diagnose since day 2 of our trip. At this point, this was day 4, and I was up under my truck, shaking everything, checking bolts, checking skid plates, checking everything that I could think of, and I just could not figure it out. It was making a noise. It was basically making a popping noise every time I went over a small bump or undulation in the road, or also when starting and stopping. But I spent days trying to figure this noise out and just couldn't do it. And so we just decided, well, we're just gonna keep rolling on and see if it presents itself, and hopefully, you know, it's nothing serious. But I wouldn't find out exactly what that was until a few days later. After the night that we spent with the guys that we had met on the trail, we decided the next day that we wanted to rent some side-by-sides and try that out, because, you know, how often are we going to be out in Moab or in Utah in general, all the way from Mississippi? So we rented some side-by-sides. We did Fins and Things. We did Hell's Revenge over the next couple days. Did a couple other smaller trails. It was a lot of fun. I've never done rock crawling or anything like that in a side-by-side, and it was definitely a different experience. Side-by-sides definitely make everything way easier, less of a challenge, but it was still fun. And we actually rented the Can-Am Maverick R's that have like 250 horsepower or something crazy with a dual clutch transmission, and those things were insane. They have a lot of power. It felt like I was driving a race car, and they just tackle those obstacles like unlike anything else I've ever driven. But after spending a few days on the side-by-sides and driving around, that was a really cool experience. Like I said, it was time for me to drive my stepdad up to the Salt Lake City airport and drop him off and pick up my wife. So it was about halfway through the trip, that's when this happened. Took him up there, dropped him off, picked up my wife. We had dinner that night with one of my friends that live in Utah. He actually owns a suspension company, the suspension company that makes the suspension that's on my truck, actually, Send It Suspension. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. But had dinner with him that night, and after we got done having some drinks and having dinner, I asked him if he would come out to look at the truck with me, because I told him about the noise that I had been trying to diagnose for almost a week now, and we got out there and we're looking for it. We were posting videos on different forums and Facebook groups trying to figure out what was going on, and we couldn't figure it out that night. So we decided that the next day that I would go to his house and we would try to dig into it just a little bit more, which wasn't a big deal because we still had a whole day to get to Moab after that. So the next morning we go to his house, we try to start looking. We're shaking more stuff. We put it up on a jack. I start shaking the CV axles, the tire. We start taking stuff off. We noticed that the driver's side CV was a little loose where it goes into the differential. After noticing that, we decided that it's probably the needle bearing that went out, which is a common thing on the Tacomas, that they'll go out and you have to replace them. A lot of people will replace them with the ECGS upgrade. So that's what we decided that I was going to try to do, if at all possible. We were calling shops all day, trying to get in touch with people. Now this was a Friday, and like I said, we were supposed to meet up with everybody else in Moab the next day. Well, we spent all day trying to get in touch with people. Either they couldn't get me taken care of until the next week by like Thursday, or they were gonna charge like $3,000 to do this job, which was just crazy to me. We weren't leaking any diff fluid or anything, nothing crazy. It was just that bearing, but obviously you don't want to drive on that. Finally, at about 3 o'clock, we got in touch with Agility Customs just outside of Salt Lake City, and they said that they could get me taken care of within the day and that it shouldn't cost me more than a couple $100s to get the issue fixed. Needless to say that I was very happy to hear that, so we drove straight down there from Salt Lake. They got us taken care of within a couple hours. Super great people, very knowledgeable. I would highly recommend, if you need any work done on a Toyota, based on my experience, definitely hit those guys up. They're very knowledgeable. We were very lucky to get hooked up with them. The only setback getting it done so late in the day is that no alignment shop could get the truck aligned. We take the truck up over to Agility Customs outside of Salt Lake and give the truck and keys to the guys. They take it back, they take it on a test drive. They bring me back into the shop and they show me that my camber bolt on my lower control arm was finger tight, pretty much, which was a little bit scary to find out, knowing that I'd just been hanging off the side of hundreds of feet tall cliffs and going down the highway doing 80. But yeah, that was the issue all along. It was that going over expansion joints, going over bumps, starting and stopping. That lower control arm was just shifting back and forth. So I was definitely glad that we took it over there, that they were able to diagnose it. They also looked at that needle bearing where the CV axle goes into, and the needle bearing was bad. They believed that the loose lower control arm probably contributed to that. All the shaking and vibrating probably caused it to go prematurely wear after I'd already driven, like 2,500 miles in the last week. But anyway, so they got us in and out of there within the 2 hours. The only downside to that day was alignment shops couldn't get me in that day because it was so late. So we ended up having to drop the truck off at one of the Big O Tires locations in the area and get a hotel for the night. Had to Uber and all that stuff. So a little bit of a setback. I let the guys know that we were going to meet up with that, hey, we're going to be a little later than we originally anticipated because this is what's going on. There were supposed to be 2 other guys that we were going to meet up with. One of them just stopped responding to the group chat. I don't know what happened there, really. I don't know. The other guy, he was driving into Moab that day from Colorado. So I said, great, I'll see you tomorrow after this is all said and done. We spent a night in Salt Lake City. The alignment shop got us taken care of by 9 a.m. the next day. Fantastic. Get up, go get the truck. We start driving towards Moab. It's about 4 hours or so from Salt Lake City. We get halfway there, and the other guy that we were going to meet up with calls me and says that he broke his tail shaft on an obstacle that morning and he was going home. Right after that, there was a gas station on the side of the road. I decided to pull over to talk to my wife to figure out what the plan for the rest of the trip was going to be. After maybe 30 seconds of thinking or so, I decided that going to Moab alone probably wasn't the best idea because we were looking at going on some very long trails that were going to take us very remote outside of Moab, and I just didn't think that the risk was worth it, considering that it was going to be one vehicle, just us, on these rougher trails, maybe even harder trails that I could use a spotter. So we decided that we were going to go to the West Coast. And just to fill you in on a little bit, kind of how adventurous me and my wife are, this decision was made in about 10 minutes. We just decided, we've been given lemons, so we need to make it into lemonade. What can we do to still make this a great trip, but not assume so much risk being alone on these rougher trails? So we decided we're gonna go to the West Coast. We're gonna go to San Francisco. We're gonna work our way back, see a bunch of other stuff that we've never seen, and get to experience as much as we can. So we started driving towards San Francisco. I think it was like it was definitely at least a 10-hour drive, maybe 12 or so. I can't quite remember, but it was a long drive. We called our parents, called some friends just to let them know, hey, plans have changed, this is what we're doing. Just wanted to let some people know that, you know, if you don't hear from us, or if you're wondering what we're doing, we're gonna be driving all the way across the country today. So we drove into the night, drove through Vegas, drove through Barstow, went all the way up to San Francisco, and crashed at like 2 o'clock in the morning after a whole day of driving. Some of you may be thinking that, you know, overlanding has to be off-road, overlanding has to be this or has to be that or whatever. You can define it however you want to. I like what Clay Croft says, that it's just vehicle-supported travel, and that's what we were still doing. Now, did we stay in a hotel a lot of nights on this trip? Yeah, we did. We didn't camp as much as we originally anticipated. We didn't cook out as much as we anticipated. A lot of things changed on this trip, but, you know, you can have differing opinions, that's fine, everybody does. But anyways, to pick back up on the story, so we drove to San Francisco, spent the night there, spent the next day in Chinatown on the wharf, took a boat ride, saw the San Francisco Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, got to see Alcatraz, all that stuff, super cool. Left there that night, went to Las Vegas, because we had never been there, we had just driven through. We saw that at night, got to see all the lights and everything, got to eat at some cool restaurants, got to go see what that whole place is about. Really cool to see at night. There's so much to do in Las Vegas, so many shows and stuff. We were kind of overwhelmed, but we spent a day there. And previously though, we had spent the night in Yosemite National Park. We spent the night there and saw that before we went to Vegas. Get a little sidetracked, but that was really cool. We got to see all the waterfalls there. Got to go see all the hanging rocks. Got to have one of the best smash burgers I've ever had in my life, by the way. There's a restaurant by one of the campsites in there that has really good burgers, so definitely would recommend checking that out. But yeah, got to go see Yosemite. Then the next day, that's when we got to Vegas and got to see that and everything. Spent a day there, walked around, doing some shopping, that kind of thing. And then we drove over to New Mexico the next day. Stayed a little bit outside of Cuba, New Mexico, because there's a very good restaurant in Cuba, New Mexico that we found last year on our trip to Colorado. It's called the Cuban Cafe. 100% hit that place up. The green chilies are phenomenal. The patty melt's very good. We had a couple other things the last time that we went that were very good, but definitely recommend hitting that place up. But anyway, so we drove from Vegas, drove just outside of Cuba, stayed in one of the public land areas that they had at a campsite right by the stream. We got up the next morning and decided that we were going to have sort of like a brunch kind of situation at the Cuban Cafe. We drove like 40 minutes to get there, and it was definitely out of the way for us to get home like we were planning, but 100% worth it. We went there, we ate lunch, had a great time, left, went down through Albuquerque, looked at a couple things through there, and then just kind of stepped our way back home. After that, we drove through Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas. We stayed a night just outside of Oklahoma City, and then made our way back home. But yeah, that's the story of the Moab trip that we did this year. There was a lot of unexpected twists and turns, a lot of different things that went right, a lot of different things that went wrong. But despite all of the good things, or what you may consider bad things that changed this trip that happened, it was definitely one of the best trips that I've ever taken in my life. We definitely fly by the seat of our pants and made a lot of different decisions along the way that just, off the cuff, which we really enjoyed. Just kind of, getting to choose where we went, not having a plan every day, just kind of deciding where we were going to go, what we were going to do. It was great overall. And I would definitely recommend traveling like that. Having a plan is great. Having routes planned is great. But sometimes just getting up in the morning and deciding which direction you're going to head can be very exciting and very rewarding at the end of the day. But that's all I have for you today, guys. If you guys have any questions or tips about how we did this trip, or how to deal with maybe not the best circumstances in the middle of a trip when you're thousands of miles away from home, just shoot me a DM on Instagram or something. Leave a comment, and like and share with your friends. But yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.